Hey, this is Otacon. You're listening to This Week in Geek with Mike the Birdman Dodd and the rest of the TWIG crew, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Are you listening? Snake? Snake? Snake!
Did you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek, and I'm your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd. Well, guys, I love having really cool people on this show. I mean, one of the advantages of being involved in the geeky media is you get to talk to a lot of people you've looked up to over the years, and today is definitely going to be no exception. Now, we've talked to other members of the Metal Gear Solid cast, and today we're going to expand that library to include probably one of my favorite characters from the entire franchise. We're going to be talking to the voice actor behind Otacon. We're going to be talking to Christopher Randolph, and he's going to join us to talk about his career, his life behind the voice, but also to talk, more in depth about Metal Gear now that Peace Walker's been out a couple of weeks, and maybe he'll be able to give us some hints behind Metal Gear Solid Rising. Mind you, we don't want to get this guy in trouble, so we're going to be a little bit careful, but hey, who knows. So anyway, I guess without any further ado, let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I was really happy that you actually responded to my Facebook message personally, and I think that's a really cool thing that you interact with your fans like that directly. So that was a tremendous surprise. Kind of flew out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning when I got your response. So
well, thank you. I'm flattered. I can't always respond to fans on Facebook, but certainly interview requests I try to respond to just because I'm always impressed that anyone would ever want to talk to me. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it was actually kind of funny. You've actually spoken to one of my friends before. Do you remember doing an interview with Amanda Mack from The Back Room? Yes,
of course. I absolutely remember that interview. And Amanda, I think actually Amanda was one of the very first people to ever get a hold of me for an interview. So she has a very warm place in my heart.
Yeah, she's the one that kind of gave me the inspiration to go and do it. She's like, Mike, go talk to Chris. He's a very easy guy to get along with. And I'm thinking, well, what the hell? Let's give it a shot in the dark. And you responded, and I've been posting all over Facebook and Twitter about it. So it's been tremendously cool.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad to be here, as I say.
All right, then. So I guess let's get started. Let's get you into the beginning of the beginning. As I often tell all my guests, I kind of do Inside the Actor Studio as if it was done by Howard Stern. That's just kind of the way that I roll. So how did you find yourself in this career? But first off, where did you grow up, and how did it all come together into this?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Massachusetts, outside of sort of in suburban Boston, it's interesting. I got involved in acting basically in grade school. A very, very astute English teacher who was also the head of the drama program in my grade school in Brookline, Massachusetts, just kind of picked me out in like fourth grade and said, I'm doing a play and I want you. And from the moment I first did that, I was kind of hooked on it. It just kind of grabbed me. And so all throughout the rest of my time at that school, I did almost every school play. And then in high school, the same thing. I did lots and lots of school plays, and then I just sort of knew from that point on that I wanted to be an actor. It's interesting because I have a sister. I'm the oldest in my family, and there are 5 kids, and I have a sister who's also an actor, and my brother's a rock musician. So it's like there seems to be a creative bent in our genes somewhere, which is kind of great. So that's how that got started, and then I went to drama school after college, and then sort of launched myself into the profession, mostly doing stage work, and then sort of gradually trying to work my way into television and film, which I'm still trying to do, and then voice acting, which I kind of stumbled onto when I was living out in LA. So and kind of almost by accident got in on the sort of beginnings of the Metal Gear franchise, or at least the modern Metal Gear, because of course it goes way back. You would know more than I do, but I think it goes back to 1990 or something.
Yeah, something I think like 1988 was the original one, and then there was even ones prior to that on some of the Japanese systems, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you're right. So. But the sort of modern, PlayStation era, I kind of, in a way, stumbled into because I was taking a class with which Chris Zimmerman was teaching on animation voiceover, which of course was the thing that you were, if you wanted to be a voice actor, cartoons were the thing that you wanted to do. This was, because these games didn't really exist at the time. But I took that class, and then, maybe 6 months later, she called me because she was putting together this game that no one had ever heard of and was wondering if I would come in and audition. And so that's how I wound up on Metal Gear.
So it says in your Wikipedia article that you auditioned for Solid Snake. What was it like to audition for that role? I mean, not kind of knowing how big it would eventually become.
Well, you as you say, you have no idea. You have no idea. You kind of go in and they show you a picture of what he looked like. At least in that first incarnation, you got a sense of it's an anime style picture, and you see the dialogue, and based on those two things, you're supposed to come up with a voice. And of course, I have no idea what I did or how I sounded. But I did my best, and they put you in this booth, and you have a window. You can look out on the control room where they're all sitting. And so I did that, and then they said thanks, and I was about to leave the booth, and Chris said, hold on, stay there a moment. So I hung out, and I could see through the glass that there was this little conference going on. And then Chris appeared in the booth with a picture of Otacon and said, will you just try reading this? So she gave me the dialogue, and the picture. At the time I wore glasses a lot. I since usually use contacts, and actually I went and got laser eye surgery, so I don't wear glasses as much anymore. But the picture of Otacon that she showed me looked remarkably like me in my glasses if I had longer hair, and I remember being really struck by that was kind of astounding to me. And then I read the audition. I wish I still had the material, but I don't. I can't remember what I read. And then that was it. I was cast.
Now, as you've gone through the years, and this role has now very much become your own, I mean, going through the original Metal Gear, then the one that was the remake on the kind of GameCube and Sons of kind of Liberty, what are some of the kind of memories that, like, came out of those kind of sessions? Because I know the voice actors don't always get a chance to kind of meet each other when they're recording voiceover. Is there anything memorable from the booth that kind of sticks out in your mind?
Well, sure, and you're right. Very often, there's just, there have been sessions where it's just me. Most of the time, if I'm working with another actor, it's David Hayter, and and he's such a lovely guy, and he's so talented. It's always fun to be in the booth with him, because as I think you know, and most of the fans know, that there's this very extraordinary relationship between Snake and Otacon that is is really amazing, and it's a lot of fun to play around with David. And apart from those things, it's almost hard to remember because there's so much. I do remember there was one day when we were doing, I think it was MGS2, where I was in the booth and it was just me, and I was there for 6 hours, and it was just me talking for 6 hours basically, and to some degree we did. I think we did do a lot of those emotional scenes. Where Otacon's sister dies and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember that being an incredibly intense work experience. And you enjoy those things enormously, even though in the moment you're kind of wiped out. But then I find I look back on that really fondly.
Now, what did you have to do to kind of get into those emotional scenes? Like you did mention, when Otacon's sister dies in Metal Gear Solid 2, Emma, you just give this emotional wail. And I'm a new voice actor myself. I recently got signed. And I'm just wondering, thank you. And where do you draw that primal emotion? Because that's one scene guaranteed in that game always makes me cry, just because I can hear that true sense of loss in that voice. I mean, is there any experience that you've drawn upon, or is this something from the acting school of being a Jedi?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I mean, I'm really glad that touches home in the way that it does, and other people have remarked on it too, and that makes me very happy. But who knows where that comes from? I mean, it's acting. You dig deep down and you try and find within yourself a sense of. I feel it's like a sense of empathy, and if you can really identify with what the character is going through and that sort of loss in a way that it actually touches you, specifically you, then I think you can come out with the right sort of sounding voice. It's there is something about voice acting that's really great in that no one really sees you, so it's all vocal. Now that can be a real technical challenge, but in other ways, you don't have to worry about how you look if you can get to the point of creating a genuine emotional response. Then that's going to work. But also, and the other thing I want to say is Chris Zimmerman, who's the voice director for all the Metal Gears, is an astounding voice director. And, her help with things like that was essential and always has been essential. I don't think Otacon could possibly have become what he is without Chris's help.
Now, what was the hardest part of playing Otacon as the character has evolved? I mean, moving past MGS2 and into the final chapter, Metal Gear Solid 4, where basically you're watching Snake die, but you're also helping him one last time to go out there and save the world, maybe giving his own life some, real kind of meaning. There was a lot of really big dialogue scenes in that, and what did you have to do to make those give it the real big punch?
Well, I certainly rely. I mean, on one level, it was easy because we have this history. It's been going on for, when the time we recorded that, it had been, I think, 9-10 years we'd been doing this. So, there was a history to all of our work together, which I could sort of rely on. And actually, interestingly enough, I sort of used the idea that maybe this was the last time that I'd be able to do this. I of course hope that is not the case, but of course at the time everyone was saying, "Oh, this is the last Metal Gear. This is going to be it, the big finale." So I was able to draw on that, and I was able to draw on my friendship and working relationship with David Hayter, which has always been fantastic. So those were the things that helped, along with, as I said before, Chris Zimmerman's, amazing direction.
What do you think was the strongest part of that, of the series overarching for Otacon, and the part that really makes you proud as a voice actor, something that really makes you feel accomplished beyond words?
Well, gosh, I think that I think what was challenging, and it's sort of a more of an overarching thing rather than a specific scene or moment. The idea of taking a character from the very beginning and having him age and get older, more mature, more experienced, and as we all do, sort of a little more kicked around by the world, but still continuing to fight forward. And that arc from MGS 1 to MGS 4, to be able to sort of do that and in a way sort of complete that, I thought was a real challenge. And actually, I think we did a really good job with it. And of course, as I say, you have to do it all vocally. So you have to change his voice just the right amount to make him seem, older as we all get. And that, I think that was the trickiest thing for me.
So now that you've been playing this character for over 10 years, I mean, let's look into the psychology of the character. Now that we've kind of seen how you do it as an actor, let's look at it from the area of the actual fiction and kind of mythos. And if you could describe Otacon's role in the Metal Gear series in your own words, how would you go about that?
Sure. Well, I think Otacon's role has evolved into being, Snake's sort of right-hand man. In a way, he is... he has served, I think, a lot as sort of a conduit to the gamer, the game player. Because, of course, as you know, when you're playing, you are Snake to some degree, and so Otacon is there to help you. There's a kind of a direct connection in that respect. But then also, and this is another part that I'm actually proud of. I think that Otacon provides a level of heart, I think, to the game, and humor also. But I think Otacon's very sensitive, and he is always looking deeper into the circumstances in which they're in. Whereas Snake, Snake is the man of action. Otacon, I think, sometimes can provide a little more perspective. And I think it's brilliant the way Mr. Kojima set it up that way, because with the 1-2 punch of Snake and Otacon, you get a sort of a full spectrum view of the worlds that Mr. Kojima has created. So I think that's Otacon's role. He provides, I think, a fair amount of humor in the game, and I think that's amazingly cool. I think the more humor that can be inserted into games like this, the better. So yeah, I think that's what he provides. He's a complete counterpoint to Snake, and yet they work together. And as they work together, there's sort of it's a much more complete picture of things.
Now, kind of looking at, say, Otacon's psychology of it, I mean, let's look a little bit deeper. Because he is the son of a weapons manufacturer, he kind of shares almost a role similar to Tony Stark and Iron Man. Yeah. And I'd like to compare maybe the kind of virtues of that. So do you think, I mean, looking at what Otacon has created, with Metal Gear Rex and everything, how do you think that weighs upon his conscience and the fact that he feels the need to go out there and right the wrongs? Like, basically, how much blood has been drawn by his sword?
Yeah, I think, as I say, because I feel that Otacon has a real conscience, I think that's a large part of his motivation throughout the series is to maybe correct the mistakes that he's made. Although it's less about the mistake. I mean, the mistakes that he's made, I suppose, because fundamentally at his root, he's a man of science, as was his father. But that science has been taken by others and to a degree perverted. I think Otacon's, idealistic idea was that what he was working on would be used for the betterment of the world. And then when he discovers that it isn't, that's when he has to step in and try and correct that problem. I think that's really interesting, particularly if you look at the world today and what's going on in terms of what's happening with science, and I think that science and technology are, always designed by people who are looking at what their designs will do for good. And then once it's out there, all sorts of things can come of it that they no longer have any control over. And so I think that's Otacon's drive, is to try and correct that and trying to get back to the ideal that he first had when he first started as a scientist.
Now, you did mention Otacon's father, and I know you appear in Peace Walker as his dad. What was it like to prepare for that role? Because I wonder what the psychologies were like. I mean, sharing a similar voice is one thing, but what was it like to prepare for a role that was the same yet different?
Yeah, that was very interesting because, of course, we sort of had to reverse engineer a voice, if you will, because you kind of had to go, well, what would Otacon's father sound like? And again, Chris Zimmerman was really helpful. I think I think it's actually, Huey's voice is a lot closer to just my normal speaking voice, I think. We wanted to make him a little more mature from the get-go. And, of course, he's in a wheelchair, and so that was a consideration. I'm not quite sure how we found it, but there were moments in the control room where I would read a line and Chris would say, you know what, that's too Otacon. We've got to step back towards Huey again. And so we would have to do it again. My instinct, of course, when I'm in the booth doing a Metal Gear is to be Otacon. So I sort of had to fight that. But I think it came out really well. I confess I have yet to play the game, but from what I hear from friends who have played it, it sounds really good.
Now, with this new character created, Huey, do you foresee the character continuing on? Because I haven't played Peace Walker that far yet. Mm-hmm. So do you think this will be the last that we actually see of Huey? Because I know Otacon does reference his father at the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2. So is this the last we're going to see of him, do you think?
I have no idea. Obviously, I would love to come back and play him again, as I would Otacon as well. I think the door is wide open in terms of what Konami, could do. It's more a question of what they want to do. I think what's so remarkable about the Metal Gear universe is that it's so expansive. There are so many directions in which they could go. There are many, many characters around which, storylines could be constructed. And, I think if there's I think the fans have a voice. I will say, if you guys like that idea, let them know, because you never know. You never know what they may come up with.
So as I enter into my final couple of questions here, Chris, I guess I want to know, have you been asked to participate or lend your voice to Metal Gear Solid Rising?
I have not heard a thing about Rising, but I have to say, to my knowledge, none of us have. I know David Hayter has not. And I don't even think Quentin Flynn, who, plays Raiden, has heard anything yet. He maybe has now, but as of a few weeks ago, I don't think he'd gotten a call either. I believe that's true. I can't confirm that 100%. But I think it depends on where they are in the process. My understanding about Rising is that it is centered around Raiden. And, I don't know what that means for Otacon. I think it's entirely conceivable that they would want to bring Otacon in. I certainly hope so. I would love to do that work. I think that'd be a blast. But maybe they want to make a break and keep Otacon more with Snake and have Raiden come up with sort of his own team. I have no idea.
Well, I certainly hope they get a chance to bring you back. And one of the big questions, Chris, that I'm going to be asking a lot of the people that participate in the Metal Gear Solid series, and I really wish I'd asked this to David when I spoke to him years ago. Mm-hmm. How is being involved in this project? I mean, not just as an actor, but keep that question in mind as well. How is being involved in this huge saga, this big sweeping storyline, changed your own personal approach to the world? I mean, how has Metal Gear storyline and characters affected your outlook on life every day, not just as an actor, but as, something internal?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely sure how to answer it. I mean, I think certainly as a work experience, it's been a terrific one. And I think, we're all affected by the work that we do. And if you do a difficult job and you do it well and it's successful, that, that sort of makes you, it not only makes you feel good, but it gives you a sense of your own creative power and juices, and that can fuel you for a long time. And, acting is a very challenging business, and you're out of work more than you're in it most of the time. And so to have something that you're doing be successful and have people enjoy it and have them ask you back to do more, can really keep you going. But then that's as an actor. Then in terms of the Metal Gear universe and to be a part of that and to look through the lens that Mr. Kojima has set up and kind of see his view of the world also has been very interesting. I mean, he really takes on big questions and big issues. As I was talking before about the use of science and technology, and is it used for good or evil, or not even evil, but evil's a little all-encompassing. I suppose it's is it used to help people, or is it used more in a more self-serving way? And he takes that on, and I think those are great things to think about. And when we're working on a Metal Gear project, the script often resonates with me, and I start thinking about the way the world is and how it might be made better. And I would hope that the people who play the game also are, find themselves thinking about those things too, because if something like this can help people think in a slightly different way, maybe it'll make the world a better place, and that is a really great goal to be looking for. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, Chris, I definitely want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today on This Week in Geek. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, where would they have to go?
Well, that's a really great question. I don't really have a website per se, although I really ought to get one. I need to build one. I am on Facebook, although I try and keep my Facebook friends to people that I actually know, as much as I appreciate the fans' interest. But I think if I'm ever doing anything that people need to know about, I'll get a hold of people like you, Mike, and try and put the word out as best I can. I'm doing a lot of writing right now, which is sort of a very insular kind of a thing to do. But as soon as things start breaking outwards, we'll put the word out somehow.
Well, all right then. Well, Chris, I definitely want you to hold on the line for just a moment. So, sure. Guys, that was my interview with Christopher Randolph. That was probably one of the richest experiences I've had as not just as a media professional, but also learning more as a beginning voice actor. I mean, it's really cool to hear the experiences that happen inside the booth where you can draw upon. So maybe I should really kind of look into getting some more acting classes under my belt and just kind of winging it like I normally do. So I'm really glad I had a chance to speak with him, so hopefully he'll accept my Facebook request and I can be one of the special elite that hang out with Christopher Randolph.
Give it a try there, Mike. You might get in. I might let you in.
Yes! Finally, I'm cracking.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it was totally worth it, Chris. All right, guys, that's pretty much going to do it for me here on This Week in Geek. We're also going to be speaking with Quentin Flynn at some point later on this month to talk about his role as Raiden, but definitely glad I got to start things rolling with Otacon. Quentin has his work certainly cut up for him. So anyway, guys, as I'm often fond of saying whenever I sign off, live free or die hard. And I'll catch you guys again right here on This Week in Geek on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Want to see me make bubbles with my spit? Sure do. In fact, that's the theme of our next show. So don't miss it.
What the hell happened to George Lucas?
Remember, kids, buy pizza, pay with steak. What's your social media business card? My fist.
Just give me a big box of beef. Don't give them ideas.
Don't forget our other Twig project, GeorgeLucasHasLostHisMind.com. Does Jesus have Matrix powers?
I think the Pillsbury Doughboys albino.
I'd like to see a cat on Tourette's.
That's the moment I give up on life. Because then I don't know what to believe in anymore. When the Amish start twittering, I'm done.
Can we leave this subject alone?
Hello.
I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh no. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm confused. As you can imagine, they don't let us out much.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek. Tune in next week to hear Kyle Hebert say,
Today, the world. Tomorrow, the universe. Next week, my chiropractor. Ay, my back.
check out our website, ThisWeekInGeek.net, for more geek content, as well as subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment about this episode, head to this episode post on ThisWeekInGeek.net and comment through Facebook Connect. Or you can also call our voicemail line at 817-717-7202. Or email us at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. This extra music was produced by perpetualemotionmachine.ca. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.